Okay, the third board snip is due in about 10 or 12 years' time at the current rate of going. There are some hat tricks that should not be completed, I often think, and this is perhaps one of them. You mentioned Michael Gove and his denunciation of experts. While he was still a live candidate, Mary, somebody asked him on one of the programmes, it's going to be very complicated to change the British legal system. You know, millions of laws have got intertwined with European directives and stuff. It'll take years to sort all that out. How are you going to do it? And he said, oh, we'll get some legal experts. I want to be a little bit provocative about Tony's... surprise, surprise, about Tony Fahey's architectural nightmare of building another Belfield. On architectural grounds alone, that's a pretty ghastly notion. But it seems to me that our German colleagues are going to have embarrassing rows of empty seats in their university lecture theatres in the years ahead, and we're going to have more and more people want to go to college. They screwed us over the Anglo-Irish bondholders, if my memory serves, and it was mostly German investment funds that were the ultimate beneficiaries of what the ECB did to both the late Brian Lennon and to Michael Noonan. And since the cultivation of a long memory is Ireland's key defence policy, it seems to me that we can get some of the money back by sending our kids to their universities. And they can't charge us any fees because we're in the EU. There are no fees. And Michael O'Leary, I'm sure, would fly them over and back at a reasonable price. And, of course, it avoids the architectural nightmare that Tony was threatening. The points Tony was making, I think, feed a little bit into what is the most important item that came out of the census and Project Dalton's account of it, and that is the importance of the shifting age composition. And there's a lot of funny things go on in Irish demographic data. There was a time when the increase in population in the east of the country was driven to a degree by migration from the other parts of the country up towards Dublin. That actually hasn't been a big part of what's going on in recent times. What's really going on is that the age structure is different, and there's a lot more folks in the child-rearing age groups in the east of the country, and they have higher births and there are fewer deaths. So it's not, sometimes when you read the papers and when you listen to provincial TDs sometimes, they go on as if everybody in rural Ireland is busily catching the bus out to Dublin. That was the case a bit in the 1960s, but if you look at the census data in the period since, the differential population growth rates are explained mainly by differences in age structure. But as Polly pointed out, we've got a real big pension problem or retirement income problem looming because of the very rapid improvements in life expectancy that have occurred. I always giggle when people say, Europe has a demographic crisis. Everybody's living longer. It's not a crisis. The Black Death was a demographic crisis. But 1/3 of the population died. That's a demographic crisis. What we have is a retirement income problem, and that is a policy crisis. It's not a demographic crisis. Or put another way, supposing obesity or something overtook the medical improvements and people started dying again at 72 or 3, would there be headlines saying, terrific, demographic crisis has been solved? It's a retirement income problem, and that's a policy problem. And how do you deal with it? There are economists who specialise in looking at pension provision. There's a group of them in the LSE, and they've written extensively about this. And they write about it in terms of what they call the life course of a typical individual. And Paddy Dalton's figures can be recycled into this frame of mind very easily. If you're born at the age 0 and you go to work at the age 16 and you retire at 65 and you had the decency to die at the age 70, then your life course contains 21 years doing nothing and 49 years working. If, however, you were born at the age 0, you're still hanging around Belfield at the age of 25, you do a bit of work for a while, pack it in at the age 60, and you won't die until you're 93 and a half, then the figures are different. And they're very, very dramatically different. Just doodle it out on the back of a napkin. And there is no solution to that problem other than a 100% savings rate. In other words, for the brief period when you're working, you'd have to save everything, the whole lot, towards your retirement. And there is no return on investment. It's arithmetic. It's not even economics. So what do you do at a serious level to deal with this? Well, you have to do two things. The first is try and get them to clear off out of Belfield a year or two earlier and tug out for a day's work. I discovered to my horror on the website of one of the British economics departments the other day, I was Googling around looking for a paper, and I found a page on their website devoted to postdoctoral students. Now think about that for a second. I didn't know there was such a thing. So the idea that people can hang about to their mid-20s and later at taxpayer expense being educated, I think we need to think carefully about that. Or put another way, there may well be a case for having free undergraduate education and extending that to anybody who has enough points in school, leaving certs and things. But is it realistic to say, if your degree is 6 years, as it is for medicine, or graduate degrees or whatever, that we'll keep, doesn't matter, you just stay there as long as you like, and we'll keep paying? I think there's a serious question to be asked about that aspect of third-level education. The other thing you need to do to square this circle is you have to start asking whether, if people really expect to live for 20 years after retirement, and those numbers are now realistic and might go up to 30 years, then the age of retirement is going to have to be reconsidered. It is just not realistic to expect that we can devise a retirement income system, whether it's done through private pension funds or through the tax system. You can't devise a system that will be sustainable with those kind of numbers. So it seems to me that state pension ages are going to have to go up. We've started that here. And compulsory retirement ages will have to be scrapped. And Mary Finan will have to keep at it for another few years. Today, the government are releasing their housing policy, and I await what's going to come out with trepidation, because what's been leaked doesn't sound too hot. One of the most interesting slides that Padraig put up showed the very high vacancy rates in parts of the country. Those vacancy rates are there for a number of reasons. One is the population trend. The other is we built houses during the bubble in the wrong places. There were even incentives, differential incentives in parts of the country where there was no demand. And you can see that in the shading of the North Midlands in the chart that Padraig put up. So we certainly need to do something really cunning next time round, and that is build houses where they're needed. I know this is complicated. The other thing I'm afraid of is, and the government there has been no regional differentiation in any of the leaked policies. None of them. So local authorities are going to build, all local authorities are going to do it. The other two things that have been leaked are a reintroduction of the first-time buyers grant. And you'll recall how well that worked the last time. And the other, and it's actually started, is the reintroduction of the tenant purchase scheme, which was suspended, I think, in 2011. And under the tenant purchase scheme, you can buy your local authority house at a discount. The discount used to be 25 or 30%. The new scheme, the discount is going to be 50%. So the government, with great fanfare, is announcing more social housing construction. So they will hose vast quantities of new water into the bucket while simultaneously creating an enormous hole at the bottom of the bucket, and housing will disappear out of the social housing stock because of the new tenant purchase scheme. So these are two features of old policies that didn't work being reintroduced. Which brings me to what Jared had to say, and I was reminded of a famous crack of Milton Friedman's, who died, I guess, 10 or 15 years ago, but he spoke at a thing in London that I was at a long time ago, 30 years ago, and there were chaps there from the Treasury, and they finally asked him to summarise, just give us one pearl of wisdom to distill all of this. And he said, well, he says, the key thing, he says, is always make new mistakes. And he said new, as in New York. And the nostalgia that we have here in Ireland includes nostalgia for old mistakes. And Jared was talking about the railway lines in Donegal, which have now sensibly found alternative uses as walkways and cycleways and all the rest of it. But it's only a few years ago that the Irish government built a new railway line in East Clare. It costs 110 million quid and carries no passengers. So there is a nostalgia for old mistakes. I just want to finish on housing again. The Oireachtas, this is the new politics, the Oireachtas committee produced a report on housing and homelessness, and there's some sensible enough stuff in it, and some stuff that's completely nuts, including, and there was unanimity on this, which is usually a bad sign, including this demand, which is repeated in this morning's papers, that the government is going to find off-balance sheet financing to build all the houses that we need, or all the social housing that we need. Now, think carefully about this. They're going to find off-balance sheet financing. What is that? Well, any of you who work for companies governed by the Companies Acts will be aware that if you borrow money, you hide it off the balance sheet, don't show it in the books, you get arrested. And the Garda Síochána take a dim view of, it's called false accounting, and it's an offence under the Companies Act, but it doesn't apply to the government. The idea that you can somehow borrow money through some vehicle other than the Exchequer, and this will cod your lenders because they're agents, and it's free money, and it's money from America or whatever. It's just bizarre. And apparently the minister is going to announce that this is his preferred funding source for the social housing programme. So the difference really between short-termism and long-termism, I think, boils down to Milton Friedman's advice: try to make new mistakes. Thanks.